Alrighty, folks. So here are some tips to develop that, and really, this is all about that layer that I was talking about, that metacognition layer. So these are some tips to get yourself up to that level of unconscious competence, to take yourself from that level 3 to that level 4. So the key for me is how you go about homework. So it's less about how you prepare for that specific test and more about what you do week in and week out. Um, so I know that a lot of you like to work in groups. I think that's absolutely terrific. I think working in groups can be a great thing. But there's some metacognitive trap there. Working in groups can often lure you into thinking that you know a little bit more than you do. Because sometimes, like when you, let's say, for example, there's three of you working together in a homework assignment. And at the end, you got all the answers right. You know, they match whatever's like in the back of the book, whatever, and you feel confident about it. You're like, all right, this is good. We got it. The problem is that what you just finished may have been the collective effort of all three of you. And then in the exam, it's just going to be you, right? And sometimes it might be that you were actually the one carrying the team and the other two didn't really get it the way you did, or vice versa, right? So, how do you then ensure that you actually know things to the level of depth that then in a stressful circumstance you by yourself can do it. So the way that we're going to do that is by adding one extra thing to the homework. Now this is not something that I can grade you on because really there's no way for me to verify that you guys do this. But basically, after you are done with your problem set, typically for me, you guys know, like I'm giving like, problem sets of maybe like 8 problems, whatever many it is. Let's say it's 8 problems. So what are you going to do is like, okay, we're done. Like we completed the thing, like it matches the answers. We feel pretty decent about it. So what you're going to do is you're not done yet. We are going to go around and take turns and just say, hey, you like explain the first problem to us, and just let that person go and just you can question them right there as to like, okay, does this actually make sense? We thought it, we got to the answer, yes, but am I still understanding it while my buddy is explaining it to me? And then when it's your turn to explain, that's actually where you're going to get the most out of it. There's no more effective way to really, really learn something than by explaining it to someone else. So at that point, metacognitively, you're really going to take off because you're going to see exactly what you're comfortable with and exactly what you're not. I mean, there might be points where you're like, okay, this made sense, but your friend might be like, wait a minute, how did you do that step? And you're gonna be like, oh, don't you're right about that. I don't know how to do that part. Or you might discover, okay, no, that's a good question, but I actually have the answer to that. So in terms of the growth, in terms of taking yourself from like that just basic, okay, I kind of get this, to do I really know this? I mean, that's where like the big leaps are made in that final session of taking turns and like don't let just the one person explain it to the other two. Force yourself to take turns and say, okay, next one, you're up, explain it to us. And until everybody, understands all of it, then you're not really done. Like that's what ends the session is, that I call it the group homework wrap up. So group homework wrap up is going to take you to the next level, seriously. And yeah, in terms of just getting that knowledge up to the level that you want. So that is essential. Now, if you work individually, you can always try to coach yourself and just say, okay, well, I got to the answers. Let me just do a couple of these just blind, just from start to finish. Can I do this without looking at the examples in the back? Or you can come to me in office hours and say, hey, professor, I got the answers. I just wanna make sure, can I do this in front of you, just on the board, and just show off to me. I'll be happy. I'll be happy if you show off your knowledge. Because to me that's where the really deep learning happens. And I'll ask you, wait a minute, why did you do that equation this way and not this other way? And you might be like, oh well, yeah. So for me, that step is essential. That group homework wrap up is going to take you a long way. Now, the goal at the end of this group homework wrap up is that every single thing it's on that piece of paper that you're turning in, on those sheets of paper that you're turning in, every single thing, if your buddies ask you, hey, could you explain this to us? that you could be able to do that. You'll be able to do that no problem because you already went through it around and it's deeply set. So you are really getting it not just at that very surface level, but it's becoming that second nature level where like you can really just explain it to anybody else. So that's a big one. Here's another one, like an advanced level technique to just reflect on what do you do know, and then how do you make sure that whatever's on the test you're well prepared for. So, and by the way, like I design my exams so that if you're doing the homework week in and week out and you know everything, like you feel just super confident about everything that you're turning in week in and week out, and week in and week out you can explain to me every problem, then the exams are going to be a piece of cake. I mean, the exams are just going to be stuff that is indeed second nature to you. I mean, if on the other hand, week in and week out, you're not doing that work, then come exam time, it's like, oh crap, there's all this stuff that I don't really know. So anyway, so that's my recommendation as to like building yourself up in the times leading up to the exam. Now, let's say exam's a little bit closer. Now, you can then take either random problems in the textbook and go through that process. And again, like if you're working with a partner, it's super helpful to just like explain to them on the spot. And just pretend you're me, pretend you're the professor, and just explain it to them. And then if you can't figure it out, and you're like, okay, no, we need to ask the professor. Come ask me. Like I'm super happy to help you out then. But this is really going to take you a long way. Extra advanced technique. Let's say you look at the problems from class, you look at the problems in the homework and the textbook problems, you're like, we got this. This is almost boring by this point. This is the next step is to try to come up with a problem that will stump your friends. So let's say we're working on that mesh analysis and you're like, man, like we are all killing it with these, problems that the professor gave us and these problems that that the textbook gave us. We're killing it. So try to come up with one that, you solve, but that's going to stump your friends. And then exchange problems. That is an amazing, amazing way to take yourself from that level 3 to level 4. If you do this, like I can guarantee that your understanding of the material is going to just go like way, way up. The reason is that as you're doing this, you're kind of trying to put myself in my shoes and be like, well, what could he possibly ask us? Like we went through all like the hardest nodal analysis problems, the hardest, mesh, the hardest resistance combinations, whatever. You went through that, and basically there's going to be nothing that I can throw at you that you're not prepared for. And because you went through that process of explaining it to each other sort of in the timely fashion of like, okay, hey, you're on the spot, explain it to me, go, then the exam stressful conditions of like, well, we've got an hour and a half or whatever to work through this, it's not going to be that stressful. Like you got 20 minutes for this problem. You've explained it to your friends in like 7 minutes, you can surely do it in 20. So that alone is going to take you to really, really heightened levels.